Welcome back to DRM News Podcast. Tonight we're diving deep into February's full moon.
The snow moon.
Yes, the snow moon. We'll find out why it's got that chilly name, what makes this one special, and even get a sneak peek at a total lunar eclipse happening next month.
It's going to be a busy month in the sky.
For sure.
Right.
So let's start with this snow moon appearing full for 2 nights.
2 nights in a row.
The 11th and 12th of February. Now, I know the moon doesn't change shape that fast. So what's up with that?
Well, you're right. The moon's phases are gradual. It takes about a month to cycle through. But this full moon...
This one's a little different.
It is. The moment of peak fullness when the sun and moon are perfectly aligned on either side of the Earth.
With the Earth in the middle.
Exactly. Happens to fall right between those 2 nights. Early morning on the 12th.
Okay, so it just looks full 2 nights in a row.
Pretty much.
To the naked eye. But I read that there's a subtle difference if you look closely.
Yeah, and this is where the lunar terminator comes in.
It's Terminator.
You know how we see all those craters and mountains on the moon? Those features cast shadows, and the terminator is that line separating the light from the dark side.
Okay, so I'm picturing it. How does that help us tell the difference between the 2 nights?
Well, think of it like this. On the 11th, the moon will still be waxing.
Maybe.
It's approaching full. So if you look closely, you might see some craters along the bottom edge that are still partly in shadow. The next night, as the moon starts to wane, those shadows will have shifted to the top right edge.
Huh.
It's a tiny change.
But it's still changing.
But fascinating to think about how even when the moon looks full to us, it's still constantly in motion.
I like that. That reminds me that even things that seem static like the moon are always changing.
Absolutely. And you know what's even cooler?
What's that?
This terminator thing. It's not just a lunar phenomenon.
Oh, really?
Earth has a terminator too.
Right, of course. The line that divides day and night.
Exactly. But ours moves a lot faster.
Because we spin so much faster than the moon.
Exactly. Our terminator zips around the globe every 24 hours.
Well,
but the moon takes a full 4 weeks for its terminator to make a complete rotation.
Totally different experience of time and light.
Totally.
Wow, that really puts things in perspective. Speaking of perspective, Astrobob has some viewing tips for those of us in Duluth.
Oh, yeah. What's he saying?
He says the best time to catch the moonrise on the 11th is around 4:30 p.m.
Oh.
And you might even spot Leo's brightest star, Regulus, nearby.
Oh, cool. So while we're talking about cool things in the sky, we can't forget about Venus.
Oh, yeah, Venus.
It's doing its best moon impression right now by showing phases.
Yeah.
Just like the moon.
Now that one's got me. I know Venus doesn't orbit Earth like the moon. So why would it have phases?
It all comes down to where Venus is in its orbit around the sun relative to us on Earth. Sometimes we see its fully illuminated side,
Okay.
and other times we only see a sliver.
Like a crescent moon.
Just like that. It's like seeing different portions of a pie depending on which way you're facing it.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's what I don't get. I read that Venus actually appears larger when it's a crescent than when it's full.
Yeah.
Now that should be the opposite, shouldn't it?
It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it all boils down to distance.
Distance.
When Venus is full, it's on the opposite side of the sun from us. So it's way farther away, but when it's a crescent, it's actually closer to Earth.
Oh.
On the same side of the sun. That's why that sliver can appear deceptively large.
So it's not just how much of Venus is lit up, but also how far away it is. Perspective is everything.
Exactly.
I read that Astrobob even managed to see Venus's crescent shape with just binoculars. Any tips for those of us who want to try that?
He said the key is sharp focus and a steady hand. It also helps to try and catch it early in the evening. When the sky is still a bit blue, that helps reduce glare.
Sounds like a fun challenge. And perfect timing, too. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. Show your sweetheart the crescent Venus.
Talk about romantic.
Much more original than a dozen roses, for sure. Speaking of romantic names, let's get back to our snow moon. Where did that name come from?
Well, February was historically known as the snowiest month in many parts of the Northern Hemisphere.
Oh, of course.
So the full moon that occurs during this time naturally became associated with snow.
Makes sense. But I also read about alternative names for this full moon, like Storm Moon and Hungry Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Those sound a bit more ominous.
They do. And they give us a glimpse into the challenges people face this time of year. Storm Moon probably refers to the harsh winter storms that were common in February.
Right.
And Hungry Moon speaks to the scarcity of food in late winter.
Before spring.
Before spring's bounty arrived.
It's amazing how these names carry so much history and cultural weight. Speaking of different perspectives, I know we have some UK-specific information about the snow moon's visibility.
Yeah, for those of you in London, the snow moon is expected to rise around 5:03 p.m. on February 12th.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the forecast isn't looking too promising. Cloudy skies and maybe some showers.
Classic British weather.
But don't give up hope. The moon appears full for a few days around its peak.
So keep looking.
So even if the 12th is a washout, you can check the sky the days before and after.
Good point. So there's still hope for all the UK sky watchers out there.
Absolutely. Now, I know there's been some talk about blue moons, and I think we need to clear something up. This snow moon,
Is not a blue moon?
not a blue moon.
Right. So for those who might be confused, can you remind us what makes a blue moon blue?
Well, a blue moon has nothing to do with color.
Oh.
It's just a term for the second full moon that happens in a single calendar month.
Oh, okay.
Because the lunar cycle's about 29 and a half days long, it's rare to get two full moons in 1 month.
So that means February can never have a blue moon.
You got it. Yep. February's just too short, even in a leap year.
Can't fit two in.
Nope.
Now, I remember you mentioning something about how we sometimes get 13 full moons in a year. How does that happen?
Well, our calendar year isn't perfectly aligned with the lunar month, which, as we said, is about 29 and a half days long. So every 2.5 years or so, we get an extra full moon in the year,
An extra one.
bringing the total to 13.
So when can we expect this next blue moon phenomenon?
Mark your calendars for May 31st, 2026.
Okay, something to look forward to. But before we get ahead of ourselves, there's another major event happening next month during the worm moon.
Why, yes.
A total lunar eclipse.
The eclipse.
This is a big one.
What?
The first we've seen since 2022. And the best part is, it'll be visible across North and South America.
This one's going to be good.
Definitely an event we don't want to miss. But tell me what makes a total lunar eclipse so special.
Well, for starters, it's going to create that blood moon effect.
Okay, hold on, blood moon. We need to hear more about this. What makes the moon turn red during a total lunar eclipse?
Well, to understand that, we need to talk about how light interacts with our atmosphere.
This is where it gets interesting.
Imagine sunlight hitting Earth's atmosphere. The shorter blue wavelengths of light are scattered in all directions, which is why we see a blue sky. But during a total lunar eclipse, the Earth blocks direct sunlight from reaching the moon. The only light that gets through has to pass through the Earth's atmosphere first.
Okay, so what happens?
As the sunlight passes through our atmosphere, those blue wavelengths get scattered away, leaving mostly the longer red and orange wavelength.
Okay.
And those longer wavelengths are bent or refracted by the atmosphere and end up hitting the moon.
So the moon is essentially bathed in sunset colors, coming from all around the edges of the Earth.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's what gives it that reddish hue.
That's incredible. It's like all the world's sunrises and sunsets are being projected onto the moon at once.
It is.
Okay, I'm hooked. Now, if we want to witness this spectacle, do we need any special equipment? Like special glasses
You do.
for a solar eclipse?
Not for a lunar eclipse. You can just step outside and enjoy the show.
That's good news. All we need is a clear sky and maybe a cozy blanket.
And maybe a warm drink.
All right. But tell me, when exactly does this eclipse happen?
The total lunar eclipse will unfold over several hours on the night of March 13th, going into the early morning hours of March 14th.
Got it. So walk us through the key moments. What should we be looking for?
Well, it starts with the penumbral eclipse, which begins at 8:57 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay.
This is when the moon starts to enter the Earth's outer shadow called the penumbra.
I see.
You might not notice much of a change at first. The dimming is very subtle.
So that's like the pre-show.
Pretty much.
So when does the real drama start?
Things get more exciting with the partial eclipse, which begins at 10:09 p.m. PST. This is when a part of the moon enters Earth's darker inner shadow known as the umbra.
Okay.
So you'll start to see a distinct shadow creeping across the moon's surface.
Now, when does the moon completely disappear into the shadow and turn that blood red color?
That's the main event, the total eclipse, which begins at 11:06 p.m. PST.
Oh.
At this point, the entire moon is within the Earth's umbra, and you'll see that dramatic reddish hue. The best part, it lasts for over an hour.
So we have an hour of blood moon magic.
You got it.
This sounds epic. But the show doesn't end there, does it?
Not quite. The total eclipse ends at 12:31 a.m. PST.
Okay.
Then we go back to a partial eclipse as the moon gradually emerges from the umbra. The partial eclipse ends at 1:47 a.m. PST.
And finally, the grand finale.
The penumbral eclipse ends at 3 a.m. PST as the moon leaves Earth's outer shadow.
Wow, what a night that's going to be. But hold on, I remember reading that Astro Bob mentioned some bonus features
Oh, yes.
during the eclipse. Can you tell us more about those?
Apparently, Jupiter and Mars will be visible in the western sky during the eclipse.
Like a 2-for-1.
Exactly.
Amazing. And to top it all off, the moon will be moving from the constellation Leo to Virgo throughout the night.
Talk about a great night for stargazing.
It really is. And you know, it's not just about the visual spectacle.
No.
These events offer us a chance to connect with something much larger than ourselves, to contemplate the vastness of the universe and our place in it.
It's a reminder that there's so much wonder and beauty out there, just waiting to be discovered.
Sometimes all it takes is looking up.
That's all it takes.
Well said. We'll wrap up part 1 of our deep dive into February's snow moon and the upcoming total lunar eclipse. Stay tuned for part 2.
See what else is in
See what else is in store.
You were just talking about all those amazing things happening up in the night sky this month. The snow moon, the total lunar eclipse.
And even Venus showing off its phases.
Like it's putting on a show just for us.
Right. But you know what really gets me?
What's that?
All of this has been happening for billions of years,
Oh, yeah.
long before we were even here to see it.
It is a humbling thought.
It really makes you realize how vast and ancient the universe is.
And yet we humans have always been drawn to that night sky, looking for patterns and meaning in those stars.
It's true. There's something about looking up at the stars that makes you feel connected to something bigger than yourself. Like we're tapping into this ancient rhythm of the cosmos, this dance of light and shadow that's been going on forever.
And it's so interesting how different cultures throughout history have interpreted these events, weaving them into their myths and legends.
Well, yeah.
Like, you think about the stories around lunar eclipses.
Huh?
Some cultures saw them as bad omens, signs of doom,
Right.
while others saw them as times of great spiritual power.
It's like they projected their own beliefs and fears onto the night sky, creating these incredible stories that have been passed down for generations.
Exactly. And even though we now understand the science behind these events, there's still something magical about them. Like, we're witnessing a cosmic ballet.
I like that.
This perfectly choreographed dance of the celestial body.
Speaking of the science, we were talking about that total lunar eclipse and that blood moon effect.
Yes.
You said it had something to do with how light interacts with the Earth's atmosphere. Can you break that down for us?
Of course. You know how the sky is blue during the day?
Yeah.
Well, that's because sunlight is being scattered by all the molecules in the atmosphere. Shorter wavelengths of light, like blue and violet, are scattered more easily, which is why we see those colors in the sky.
Okay, that makes sense. But what does that have to do with the moon turning red during an eclipse?
Well, during a total lunar eclipse, the Earth is positioned directly between the sun and the moon, blocking the sunlight from hitting the moon directly.
Right.
However, some sunlight still reaches the moon by passing through the Earth's atmosphere.
So the light goes around the Earth.
Kind of, it passes through the atmosphere.
Got it.
And as that light travels through the atmosphere, those shorter blue wavelengths get scattered away, just like they do during the day.
Okay.
But the longer wavelengths of light, like red and orange, they're less affected by that scattering and continue on their path.
So it's like the Earth's atmosphere is acting as a filter,
Yeah.
letting only the reddish hues through to light up the moon.
Exactly. And because those longer wavelengths are bent or refracted as they pass through the atmosphere, they sort of converge on the moon,
Oh,
giving it that eerie red glow.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like the moon is bathed in all the sunsets and sunrises happening around the world at that moment.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
It really highlights how connected everything is,
Okay.
even on a cosmic scale.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing how much we've learned about the universe,
Yeah.
and yet there's still so much that we don't know.
That's what I love about it. Every
Yeah.
new discovery just opens up more questions and possibilities.
Exactly.
Speaking of observations, I remember you mentioned that we don't need any special equipment to view the lunar eclipse. But any tips to get the most out of the experience?
Absolutely. The first thing is to find a location with a clear view of the southeastern sky, away from city lights if possible.
Makes sense. The darker
Yeah.
the sky, the better.
Exactly. And if you have binoculars or a small telescope,
Oh, yeah.
those can enhance the viewing experience, let you see more detail on the lunar surface.
So you don't need fancy equipment,
Nope.
but it helps.
It does. And even if you don't have any special equipment, just being present and witnessing this event
It's pretty cool.
is incredible.
Yeah.
Just take a moment to appreciate the vastness of space and the movements of these celestial bodies. It's a truly awesome spectacle.
I agree. It makes me wonder what impact these events had on those ancient cultures.
I know.
Can you imagine seeing a total lunar eclipse for the first time?
And not knowing.
with no scientific understanding of what was happening?
It must have been both terrifying and amazing at the same time.
For sure.
I mean, it's no wonder they created all those myths and legends to try and explain it.
It's a testament to human curiosity and our desire to understand the world around us.
Absolutely.
And in a way, we're still doing that today, even with our scientific knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
We're still trying to understand our place in the universe, to uncover the mysteries out there.
It's the ultimate quest, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
And these celestial events,
Yeah.
they remind us how much is still out there to discover.
So much wonder and beauty in that vast expanse of space.
Speaking of wonder and beauty, we were talking earlier about Venus and its phases. It's like a bonus show alongside the eclipse.
Right. It reminds us that even the planets are constantly changing, constantly moving.
I read that Venus will actually reach its peak brightness on Valentine's Day.
Oh, wow.
Now that's a romantic gift from the cosmos.
Much better than a bouquet of flowers.
I love that.
Yeah.
It ties in so well with our theme of connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
It does. Whether it's a full moon, a lunar eclipse, or the phases of Venus,
Yeah.
these events invite us to look beyond our everyday lives and think about the vastness and mystery of the universe.
And who knows, maybe in doing so, we discover something new about ourselves.
I think you're right about our place in the grand scheme of things.
That's the beauty of it all. Every time we look up at the sky,
Yeah,
we have the opportunity to learn, to grow, to be inspired.
it's true.
Well said. On that note, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into February's celestial wonders. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into February's celestial wonders. We've covered so much already.
From the double full moon,
To the blood moon.
even Venus's phases.
It's amazing what's happening up there if you just take a moment to look up. But before we go, I wanted to touch on something we mentioned earlier.
What's that?
Those bonus celestial sights during the total lunar eclipse.
Oh, right. Astro Bob mentioned that Jupiter and Mars would be visible in the western sky during the eclipse.
So it's like the main event, the blood moon.
Uh-huh.
And then we've got Jupiter and Mars making an appearance.
It's like a cosmic meet and greet.
I love that. And to make things even more interesting, the moon itself will be moving from Leo into Virgo.
Wow, so much happening.
I know, I'm already thinking about where I can go to get away from the city lights and see it all.
That's the best way to do it. Find a nice comfy spot, maybe bring a blanket,
A warm drink.
and just enjoy the show.
It's really amazing to think about how these events, the full moons, the eclipses, the planetary movements,
Yeah.
they've been happening for billions of years.
Long before we were here to see them.
It's humbling to think about.
It really is. It puts things in perspective.
But they still captivate us.
They do.
These celestial events inspire awe and wonder.
In people all over the world.
I think it's because they connect us to something so much bigger than ourselves.
To something ancient and timeless.
Like we're tapping into a rhythm that's been going on since the beginning of the universe.
And it makes you think about all the cultures throughout history that have looked up at the night sky and found meaning in these events.
Oh yeah, creating stories and myths.
Trying to make sense of what they were seeing.
And even though we now have a scientific understanding,
Right.
there's still a sense of mystery and wonder.
Oh, for sure. We can explain how an eclipse happens.
Right.
But you can't really grasp the immensity of it.
It's that combination
Yeah.
of the science and that primal feeling of awe.
And as we learn more about the universe, that awe just grows deeper.
Every new discovery leads to new questions.
New possibilities.
Like the universe is this endless source of fascination,
It really is.
always revealing something new.
To those who take the time to look,
And I think that's a perfect note to leave our listeners on.
what do you think they should do?
I think as you go about your day, take a moment to look up. Appreciate the beauty and wonder of the night sky. Be inspired by those mysteries.
Well said.
And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into February's celestial highlights. Thanks for joining us on DRM News Podcast.
Don't forget,
To look up.